Razia's Ray of Hope, One Girl's Dream of an Education. Written by Elizabeth Suneby, illustrated by Suana Verelst. My cousins and I raced down the road to see what the excitement was about. Men and women were gathering around the empty lot in our village. Any time we played in that lot, I'd found shards of clay tiles and not much else. This day, ribbons brightened the dry earth. Important looking adults were laying a large stone on the ground, and women passed out chocolates wrapped in shiny papers. My little sister Zara and I collected as many as we could and stuffed them into our pockets before asking for more. My grandfather spotted us and walked over. I hung my head, afraid he would scold us for taking more than our share of the candy. Instead, Babaji pointed proudly to the large cornerstone. This is where my school once stood. I knew Babaji had gone to school. I loved hearing his stories about learning to read and write and calculate numbers. It sounded so exciting. What happened to it? Asked my cousin Hamid. Babaji looked at the ground. It was destroyed by 17 years of war. But what's happening today? I asked. The Nowruz celebrations are over. They are building a new school for girls, said Babaji. A school for girls! Every night I fell asleep dreaming about going to school like my brothers. Please, Babaji, ask Baba and Aziz if I may go. I must go. That evening, like most evenings, I sat by my brothers Jamil and Kareem as they studied by lantern light. They attended the boys' school in the next village. Baba, my father, worked on our farm with my uncles and cousins. My two eldest brothers, Aziz and Ahmed, worked at the quarry, cutting stones. They never wanted to go to school. Like us girls, they could not read or write. Jamil, may I have a piece of paper? I asked. Why do you need a paper? You don't have homework. You can't even write, said Kareem. Yes, I could write. I had memorized the Dari alphabet, and I could spell my name. But I was afraid to tell my brothers. What if they wouldn't let me sit with them? I kept quiet. Whenever I found Babaji alone, I would whisper in his ear, Have you spoken to Baba and Aziz yet? I will, my dear Razia, Babaji would say as he patted my head. It was always, I will. So I turned to my mother for help. Bibi, have you seen what they are building on the empty lot? Babaji says it will be a school for girls. Yes, I know, Bibi answered as she hurried me and Zara to join her cousins. They were on their way to the village tandoor to bake naan for dinner. I took my sister's hand. Please, Bibi, I want to go to school. Girls from our village are registering. Girls from other villages, too. Sarah told me when we played hopscotch yesterday. Bibi handed us our dough and shooed us out the door. I called back, I need to learn to read and write, Bibi. I promise to teach you. Please talk to Baba and Aziz. I will, said Bibi. She sounded just like Baba G. Months passed as I watched the school rise brick by brick from the dirt, but neither Bibi nor Baba G ever had an answer. At the beginning of March, the construction crew covered the bricks with white stucco that made the new school shine in the sunlight. They painted the door red, as bright as the flames of the tandoor. Each morning, as I swept the courtyard, I heard girls chatter about the nice woman who started the school and the teachers from Kabul. Each afternoon, as I fetched water from the well, I saw girls on their way home from registration, carrying crisp new school uniforms over their arms. One night, as I lay on my mattress, I heard Babaji call my father, brothers, and uncles to a family meeting. I propped myself up to catch every word of their talk. Babaji started the jirga. Razia wants to attend the new girls' school in the village. I support her desire. Some of you are too young to remember, and some of you were not even born. But before the occupation of our country, before the civil wars, and before the Taliban, women in Afghanistan were educated. They were doctors, government workers, and journalists. It is time to give our daughters and granddaughters in Desubs the chance to read and write. Our family and our country will be stronger for it. I couldn't believe my ears. Would I be allowed to go to school? The Jirga continued. It was Uncle Iqbal's turn to speak. Our girls need to help their mothers at home. We need Razia to work in the orchards too, Uncle Ali added. Our trees are just coming back after years of drought, and Razia harvests almonds and peaches faster than any of us. Razia can complete her chores before and after school. That will be the condition of her enrollment, Babaji replied. Next, you'll want Razia to go into town to shop by herself, said my father, wrinkling his forehead. Or for women to shed their burqas in public, my brother Ahmed added. My brother Aziz ended the jirga. Razia is not going. Those four simple words made my heart sink. The next morning, I woke with the sun to practice my reading. From under my pillow, I took out scraps of newspaper that the baker wrapped around our freshly baked naan. Even if I couldn't go to school, I was determined to be the kind of woman Babaji had described, a woman who helped others through her work inside and outside her home. After my morning chores, I walked to the school. I passed the stone wall being built around the school grounds, and I knocked on the bright red door. A woman opened it and greeted me with a smile. Hello, my name is Razia Jan. Come in, please. I entered a different world. Fresh white hallways, clean classrooms with desks, chalkboards, books, paper, and pencils all in one place. It was unbelievable. I introduced myself. My name is Razia too. I want to come to your school, but my brother and father will not give me permission. I told Razia Jan what I'd overheard at the Jirga. Razia Jan offered to come home with me and speak to Babaji. Maybe together they could convince the other men to let me attend school. As soon as Razia, John, and I arrived, I ran off to find Babaji. Babaji, the Malum Shabia from the new girls' school is here to speak to you. Please come greet her. Bring Baba and Bibi. I spoke a mile a minute so as to not waste any time. Babaji didn't look surprised to learn I had gone to the school on my own. He and Razia John spoke privately for several minutes. Then Babaji excused himself to find my father and mother. I stayed out of sight when the three returned to speak to Razia John. Razia John thanked my family for their time. Then she described how her school would teach Dari, English, Pashto, math, health, and hygiene to younger girls. As the girls got older, the school would teach them how to read the Quran, as well as geography, science, history, and algebra. Razia Jan also explained how her school would provide textbooks, a new uniform, and healthy lunches for all the students. Best of all, she said, the school would be free. Baba sounded surprised to hear about everything the school would provide. He told Razia Jan he would speak to my brother Aziz when he returned from the quarry. But just then, Aziz walked in. Babaji spoke up. Aziz, I did not realize you were home. Razia Jan turned and introduced herself and her school. She knew Aziz was the one to convince. I ask for your tolerance, if not support, for Razia's education. Please consider, if men are the backbone of Afghanistan, then women are the eyes of our country. Without an education, we will all be blind. Aziz shook Razia Jan's hand and walked out of the room. I followed him. Aga Jan, why are you home so early? Are you feeling sick? I asked. His face was pale and sweaty. Yes, I have a fever. My body aches all over. I stopped for medicine on my way home, but I need Kareem or Jamil to read the directions to me. Please get me some water. Aziz closed his eyes. I poured a glass of water and brought it to Aziz. While he dozed, I picked up the medicine bottle and slowly sounded out the directions. I looked up and saw Aziz watching me. How do you know how to read? He asked. I listen to Jamil and Kareem study every night, I said, counting out his pills according to the directions. Please, Agajan, please let me go to school. I will be able to help the family even more if I do. Aziz took his medicine and smiled. Then he went back to rest without uttering a word. Only a couple of days remained before Nowruz and the opening of the girls' school. I sat on the stoop scrubbing potatoes for the evening soup. If I could not attend school, I would ask my friends to share with me what they learned every day. That would be second best, yet far from perfect. As I picked up the last potato, I heard Aziz approach her. Razia, he said. I peeled the potato quickly to avoid his gaze. I have reconsidered. I learned this morning that stones from my quarry are being used to build a wall around the girls' school. Aziz paused. I did not move or make a sound. Now I trust you will be safe in that building, my precious sister. You may attend Razia Jan's school. I couldn't contain myself. I leapt up and threw my arms around Aziz. I promise to stay clear of danger. Thank you, Agajan. But you must complete your household chores before and after your classes, Aziz continued. I will not let you down, Agajan. Thank you. Soon after, my family celebrated Nowruz in the orchards. We picnicked under the almond blossoms that were the first bloom of spring, and now the sign of a new school year. On the first day of school, Razia Jan greeted all the students at the gates of the Zabuli Education Center. Salam alaikum, welcome. She patted each of us on the back and we walked through the bright red door of our beautiful new school. I was led to the third grade classroom. My teacher introduced herself and then asked each of us to say our name and what we wanted to be when we grew up. My friend Sarah threw her hand up first. Malum Shabia, my name is Sarah and I want to be an engineer when I grow up. What's an engineer? Marwa blurted out without being called upon. I am too young to know that, but when I become one, I will tell you all about it, Sarah explained. Rahila waved her arms and our teacher picked her next. I am Rahila and I want to be a doctor. I will build a clinic in our village and treat all the children for free. I spoke last. Malum Shabia, I have always dreamed of being a teacher, and I promised my mother and my oldest brother Aziz that I would practice on them. Education for everyone. You might sometimes wish you didn't have to go to school, but can you imagine if you weren't ever allowed to go to school, if you never learned how to read or write? Around the world, about 69 million school age children are not in a school. That's more than the number of people living in the states of Texas and California combined, and more than double the population of Canada. Almost half of these children, 31 million, live in sub-Saharan Africa. More than a quarter, 18 million, like Razia, live in southern Asia. There are many reasons why these children do not go to school, including poverty, political instability, regional conflict, and natural disaster. Many children are also kept out of school because their local traditions forbid it. Instead of learning in school, children often must help to support their families, usually by working in jobs that earn very little money. Razia's story is inspired by the lives of real girls living in the village of the Subs, north of Afghanistan's capital city, Kabul. Only about one quarter of girls living in developing countries go to school at all, and in Afghanistan, only about 13% of women are literate, which means only 13 out of 100 can read and write. Imagine if your mother couldn't read or write. She wouldn't be able to read you a story, a map, or the directions on a medicine bottle. She wouldn't be able to drive a car because she couldn't pass the written test. And there are few well paying jobs for people who can't read or write. So it's likely your family would not have very much money. By contrast, women who are literate tend to have better incomes, housing, and health care. And in turn, they provide these things for their families and communities. Everyone benefits from educating women. The real Razia Jan. Razia Jan was born in Afghanistan and moved to the United States when she was a young woman. She worked hard as a tailor and raised her son in a small town in Massachusetts. After September 11, 2001, Razia felt she needed to connect people from her homeland in Afghanistan and people from her new home in America. In 2007, she started Razia's Ray of Hope Foundation. She hoped to improve the lives of women and children in Afghanistan through education. In 2008, Razia made the big decision to give up her comfortable life in the United States and move back to Kabul, Afghanistan. She planned to open the Zabuli Education Center for Girls. The education center is in the middle of 7 villages that never had a girls' school before. Today, the center is full of 350 young girls learning to read and write. The students love school so much, says Razia, that they run in the door every day and even beg for school to be all year long without vacation. Many of the girls take their workbooks home and teach their mothers the lessons. These brave young girls and their commitment to become educated are the inspiration for this book. In recognition of Razia's work, she was honored by CNN as one of their top 10 Heroes of 2012, an award given to ordinary people doing extraordinary things to make the world a better place. Razia believes that education is the key to positive, peaceful change in the world. Do you agree?